Well, hello and welcome to PM Express. And today we are looking at safety at the workplace. Safety, safety, safety. Once upon a time, I had a guest on the show, Nana Akwada, who says that, you know, Nana, if you don't have a word in your language, it's very difficult for that particular thing to have any meaning to you. And as Ghanaians, we don't have the word safety in any of our languages, and so we seem to, you know, put it on the back burner until such time that something happens, and then we firefight. But safety, I don't know. It's, you know, we've been hit so many times, but we don't seem to wake up from our slumber to the realization that you need to really have a, you know, a safety attitude. We don't. Over the weekend, some workers working at Newmont, you know, had an unfortunate incident where some concrete works collapsed. 6 people lost their lives, 2 got injured, 2 escaped. And so safety is back on the table for discussion. If you look at the amount of hospitals and government institutions, schools that have got terrible safety records, you will be amazed. I don't want this conversation to center only on Newmont. Why? Because Newmont has got an impeccable safety record. Even though this is very, very unfortunate, anyone who knows Newmont knows how impeccable they do safety. However, it's happened there, which means something might have gone wrong. And so if people who are that careful can suffer this unfortunate situation, how about the rest of us who don't take safety that serious? But then we talk about safety, is it only physical safety that we look at? Is it only going to be at the workplace? How about our work, our churches, our schools? How safe are they? And that's how broad this discussion is going to be. My name is Nana Ansakwa, the 4th Chief of the Little Republic of Akomo Edumasa. I know when I say it's a republic, some people get angry, but it's a republic. When I come back, I'm talking to a couple of gentlemen who know a thing about safety in the workplace. Don't go. Well, thank you very much. With me in the studio is Ben Arthur, who is a labor consultant and also an engineer, which we always seem to leave out, even though he struggled hard to get to that. We just say he's a labor consultant. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Nana, for having me as well.
Very good. And then on Skype, joining us is Adam Bona, our own in-house security expert, CEO for Security Warehouse. He will join us on Skype. Adam, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Nana.
Great. We'll hear a clip about John Peter Amewu with regards to the issue to set the conversation rolling.
Okay.
On behalf of government, let me first of all extend our sincere sympathy to the Berry family. It's unfortunate, you've seen it yourself, and it's a complete structural failure. You realize that during the process of casting the concrete caved in. Investigations are still going on, but it's clear that the prop that support the slabs, you know, probably might not be well placed, and that could trigger stresses that enable this surface slab, you know, to cave in. About 1,000 cubic meters of concrete, you know, you could just imagine the weight is carried. The team will investigate as far as even to look at some of the detailed design, the structural design, whether the designs had actually been taken into consideration to take such a load of concrete above it, considering the dead load. All these things will be looked into as part of their terms of reference. We would like to get this report maybe within the next 2 weeks. You know, safety precautions are key in every mining site, and I expect some of these precautions should be taken into consideration. If what we are hearing, if it's true, that they may have to ask workers to go beneath and find out what is happening because they detected that there are some structural unsoundness happening, and so the workers have to come down. If that is true, then actually something wrong might have happened. But I don't want to preempt, what the mine inspectors and the team who are detailed to do this investigation are going to come out with. If negligences are detected, the law would have to be applied.
Well, once upon a time, I got a job with VW. And so, as a salesperson, I'd done my interviews and everything, and they thought that, look, he's competent enough, let's poach him, because I was already with Peugeot. So they did everything to poach me. Now, in order for me to start, I had to do a health and safety examination. So it comes up on the computer. You have 100 questions that roll out, and within, I think, 30 minutes, you have to answer 100 questions, and you have to score a certain mark. And if you fail, they come back. You can do three in a day. And so if you fail, they come back politely and says, oh, okay, Mr. Sitimisa, why don't you come back tomorrow and try again? And then you go home and you come and try. And then if you fail, it's no problem. Look, rest this week, come back. So until you pass the health and safety, they're not going to start. Yes, they're going to employ you, but only after you have passed the health and safety rules, how to lift, how to, mine slippery floors, and all these questions will pop up, and you have possible questions for you to answer. When are we going to get there, Ben, where, the employer insists that before you start work here, you understand that you can't plug 2-3 things in a plug hole, make sure there's nothing on the floor, the way you lift things, high visible jacket, places where you have to walk, lightning, everything, Are we going to get there, or have we missed the mark?
Thank you, Nana. But before I get to answer your question, let me take this opportunity to thank Multimedia for helping us get our 3 doctors. Just quite recently, I wrote a letter to the Ministry of Health and the Director General for Ghana Health Service. It was difficult for us to get a gynecologist and a surgeon, but thanks be to God, the government has listened to our cry through your platform. So I'm very, very grateful. Going back to the issue, I think by and large as a country, to be very sincere, we do not treat workplace safety, and being specific, workplace safety as a priority at all. I normally give examples from the very, very, very lowest point of the ladder. Go to any workplace, and if you want to know whether they adhere to safety standards, I want you to visit their washroom, and you know whether the rest will follow, because that is one of the key safety devices that our labor laws say specifically that provide for workers. It's an eyesore, and I'm being bold about this, to go to our arrival hall at our port, airport to be specific. You visit the washroom, and you want to find out whether Ghana, we really want to be a gateway to Africa. West Africa, as we say it. Go to other institutions, private and public. Sometimes washrooms are under lock, and you want to find out whether these people really believe in the safety of their workers. This is just a little example, because if you want to visit the loo and you have no access, look at the kind of injury that is being caused to you, psychological, physical, biological. But even in the midst of these things, we treat ourselves this way. How then can we uphold other mechanisms, other standards? If you put all our safety rules together, we have very fine rules in this country. Starting from our 1992 Constitution, Article 24 to be specific, says that it is within the reach, it's within the fundamental rights of any individual to work under safe and satisfactory, conditions. So it's guaranteed by our Constitution. We have our labor law, we have the mining regulations, in fact, mining regulations, LI 665 of 1970. We have the Factories, Shops and Offices Act. We have ILO conventions. Some of them we have not ratified. Probably that's why we don't have an organized system as far as safety issues at the workplace is concerned. We have various regulations in this country that ought to help us organize ourselves better. But when it comes to definitions as to what the standards should be, there is no law in this country that spells us out to the employer that these are the specific standards. Do A, do B, with specific definitions. We don't have anything like that. If you take the labor law and you look at, I'm referring to Act 651 of 2003, between sections 118 to 120, that specifically talks about occupational health and safety at the workplace, you realize that there is not a single definition as to specifics. What are the standards? It's been left to the discretion of the employer. And where it's been specific is to say that if you're an employee and you are ordered to put on your safety garments and the rest, and you are not doing it, well, the employer has the right to fire you or to coach you, to discipline you, and all those things. So we don't have all these things defined too well for the employer to obey. Again, we are in a regime, a legal regime, where we have relaxed as far as enforcement is concerned. Let me give you some statistics from ILO, and I'll come back to Ghana, and you realize that we are killing ourselves unnecessarily just by being negligent as far as workplace safety is concerned. The ILO estimates 2.02 million people to die each year from work-related accidents and diseases. They have a further 317 million people who suffer from work-related diseases. We also have 337 million fatal and non-fatal accidents, which are work-related, culminating in 4% loss of the world's GDP. So if you look at this, you realize that we are losing skilled workers. We are losing, as far as we are concerned, on the lines of productivity, costly retirement. If somebody is injured at the workplace, depending on the workplace policy, compensation policy, you are forced to retire the person and pay the benefits for virtually no work done, all because we believe that workplace safety is not too important. Absenteeism is one. So if you want to look at high insurance that we have to pay for people who have been injured and the rest, you realize that it's, excuse my language, it's unwise for us as a nation not to pay key attention to some of these areas. We lose as a nation. Let
me bring Adam in here, and then I'll come back to you. Adam, that's quite, revealing that we don't even have specific laws so that the guy knows how to make the workplace safe for the workers.
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers. I think you know me with regards to security.
Exactly.
Safety is one of the areas I have a lot of certification, practice, and all that. And so it's one of the things I do as well.
Okay.
And now, and greetings to Benata, who is in your studio.
Sure.
With regards to workplace safety, I have done a lot of writings on that. I've spoken at large at events within and out of the country with regards to workplace safety, safety in general. I would want to bring it, lower than, the workplace. You go to the schools that are supposed to be teaching artisanship. When I say artisanship, you go to the technical schools that are supposed to be teaching masonry and teaching carpentry and teaching electricians, and you would realize that some of these schools, or almost all of them, either they have some exposed wires, either they have some cracked building, or either they have some roof leakage and all that. And so you will then understand that when this incident that has happened, I know we are going to go there, when these people go to, when people go to these schools to be taught how to build, to probably mold blocks and mortar, put it together roof, and do other things. And they are not taught the basics when it comes to what will qualify as a safety measure before, probably implementation. Most often we don't do that. And so you would not be surprised to realize that people would be working in hazardous conditions without necessarily realizing that the conditions under which they are working does not suit or is not fit for any human to be working under it, because they are the training facilities in which where they pass through, they probably would have studied in some dilapidated buildings that does not, augur well for their teaching. And so they come out and they don't realize that this is not the norm, this is not the practice, it's not supposed to be. Also, you go to most of, I will tell you that some research I did, a bit of research I did realize that out of 10 organizations in this country, out of 10, we would have about 2 of them that would have proper safety mechanisms, i.e. you are talking about non-slippery floors. When they are cleaning, they have the warning signs, they have the fire exits, they have the fire detectors. Most of these organizations, you go in there, and unfortunately, they would have certain things that are there, but unfortunately, these things aren't working. And I'll give you one example. I have taken part in a lot of events at the International Conference Center. And I mean, this is, I'm putting it out there. I believe they are listening. Most of their conference room doesn't actually direct you where an exit is. It doesn't direct you where the alternative exit is. And so if there was any emergency and there were people having meeting in these conference rooms, all of them are going to be running towards one door, and that itself probably would either put these people in harm's way. And so, Nana, the issue is much bigger than it is. But unfortunately, it looks like we have, because of the bread and butter issues, we seem to be concentrating on, let's get more people employed. Let's get more people out of the street, rather than how do we get the workplace to, suit the kind of people who are coming to work. And also refresher programs. I mean, fortunately, I would have done a lot of these things back in England. And every now and then, you have to go to sharpen your skills with regards to, doing this. And you have to, if you have been trained to train others, you have to make sure people are, workers are constantly, taking through a model, either every quarter or every 6 weeks, they're taking through a model that would involve how many people are aware that if you have to lift, the highest weight you have to lift should be about 25 kilos. And if you are doing 25 kilos, there is a way you lift it up. These are things that most people are not aware of. A bag of cement in this country, I think, is about 50 kilos. And I have seen a lot of people just pick it up like a piece of stone. And I say, well, today you think you are fit, tomorrow you would have been damaging your spine. And so these are some of the things, unfortunately, you go to our hospitals and you have a lot of people who are suffering from various types of, incurable diseases. And how does it happen? It happens because from the word go to our schools, the kind of place of convenience some of these children use. And we've had some of them sometimes, fall into some of these places of convenience. We talk about them, buildings collapsing on, pupils. I mean, we had it in the central region there about some time ago where, pupils, little children died. And so for me, the conversation should be much broader. Go to Tema, go to the Spintex Road, go to some of these industrial areas, and you would realize that this place does not fit for the kind of work they are doing. But unfortunately, look at those who carry our waste. When they come to carry the waste, do you see them wearing nose masks? No. When you see them hanging on the vehicles that, what do you call it, the vehicles that take the waste, they just hang on it. And so, unfortunately, sometimes you are driving behind a vehicle, and the kind of fumes that is emanating from this vehicle, you ask yourself, did the police officer see this vehicle moving on the street? And it would have gone through 20, 30 barriers before getting to where you accosted that vehicle. And so, Nana, these are some of the things that I think as a nation, probably this is some sort of awakening. Hopefully, we won't make noise and go back to sleep till the next disaster, comes up. The conversation will go on, and hopefully something is going to be done about workplace safety and safety in general. Safety in general. Look at how, what do you call it?
Hold on.
Look at how zebra crossings are marked in this country. They are put at locations, and you ask yourself, why don't we understand the essence of zebra crossing? But unfortunately, this is where we find ourselves, Nana.
Okay, let me bring Adam in here. I'm listening to catalog of things that we have missed. Are we overwhelmed?
I do not think we are overwhelmed by safety issues at all, because I would say this in comparison with what other countries have recorded. But this is also a signal that as we get industrialized, as we up our economic activities, some of these things are expected. What we have to do as a nation is to make sure that at least we have enough preventive mechanisms. I emphasize preventive, because you don't allow the worst to happen before you try to go in with the mechanism to, solve it. But going back to an earlier comment you made, I believe that Ghana has enough laws to ensure workplace safety. What is missing is the clarity as to who should specifically do what, and where others have been asked, such as under Section 118 of the Labour Act, mandating employers to ensure workplace safety and the rest. If you leave definitions, as I had earlier mentioned, you haven't done much. Make sure that the child is not hungry. If you don't give key parameters as to what you should see as indicators when a child is getting hungry and the rest, I'm telling you, when a child is crying out of hunger, you might mistake it to mean that some kind of ant is biting, the child. So you give in definitions, indicators, then that will be okay for us. We have ignored safety issues because of the cost associated with it. In some areas, we are very much aware of the need to do certain things. But when it comes to the cost aspect of it, Ghana is largely informal. When I say largely informal, looking at the sector, our employment sector, over 86% of all employees or employment places in Ghana is in the private informal sector. So definitely we have acquired some unwanted skills from these areas. And those who are in the formal sector, about 6% in the public sector, 7% in the private informal sector. You also realize that we have a lot of shortfalls. And usually it looks as if our attention is more on the physical hazards. We also have biological hazards. When somebody has an infection, that can also be communicated to another person. We don't do much as far as some of these things are concerned. We don't do much. We seem not to talk more about some of these issues. Ergonomical hazards. For example, your posture at work, how you sit, how you move. It is very hazardous to some people, but because it takes a long time to notice some of these things, people begin to have backache after many years of sitting in a certain posture for very long periods of time. You realize that these are hazards, but because they are not detected immediately, we don't pay much attention on that. And it is as if our laws and its implementation are silent on that. But again, this is one key area that a lot of people die and get strained out of it. We have chemical hazards, as well as exposure to obnoxious gases. I had to do labor inspection in one of the organizations. I won't mention name. When we went there, it's a restaurant. When we went there, interestingly, the gas cylinder was inside the kitchen. And we asked a very simple question that, please, if this gas should leak, what do you think will happen here? In fact, the authorities didn't give me any answer. I pushed and pushed, no answer came. But of course, the answers were very obvious. So when people are exposed to air pollution, some things like physical hazard, like excessive noise, radiation, these are all hazards that I believe we need to pay attention to. Extreme temperatures, hot and cold. Nobody knows the effects on the body. My colleague had mentioned, 40 cables and the rest. These are all hazards that we don't seem to, care for, or we don't seem to be very careful to get some of these things corrected. Coming back to one key other areas that we have ignored completely, psychological hazards at the workplace.
Okay, let me take a break because I need the whole time on that. And then while we're looking at psychological hazard at the workplace, I just want to find out, in this day and age when there's a long queue of unemployed people, you are fortunate enough to know an uncle who knows a friend who knows a minister. You get there for the work and say, well, the workplace is not safe. Really? After being home for 3-4 years, you now get opportunity to work and you say, oh, well, the workplace is not safe. We have to put all that in perspective, so we can be back. Safety at the workplace, such a simple word or simple sentence, but it goes such a long way. And just before the break, Ben was throwing psychological damage.
That's right.
At the workplace. Anytime you say safety, we're thinking about a block falling on your head, block falling. Now you are throwing a spanner in the works, talking about psychological damage. So what are we looking out for in such a case?
In some of these cases, for example, you realize that the training of an individual and his capacity is to, let's say, work on 4 files a day. But he's been assigned 13 files. The intimidation. It's part of the whole show. When I say it's part of the whole show, when the person feels intimidated and believes that this is a trap for me to fail so that I'll be fired, the sense of insecurity itself is psychological torture at the workplace. When the work content and the interactions at the workplace is so bad, you realize that people are traumatized. They feel unsafe psychologically. You realize that somebody is in a mood that for one particular reason or the other, he is simply not cut out for a specific job. But that is what they say he should do. You realize that it becomes torture for that individual. So the job content and how it has to be done and handled and the rest, they all constitute kind of hazards to people. So when we're talking about safety at the workplace, we don't have to leave some of these things out. Not just the physical hazards where your arm is being chopped off or your nose is being sliced or something like that. No, we have to talk holistically about all the elements that constitute hazard at the workplace. We have people who get injured, but it is only when they have gone on retirement that they notice. If, for example, I'm not a medical scientist, but I know that if you look at an object very close to you repeatedly for a very long time, your eye will adjust to that, to the extent that there comes a time it becomes very difficult to see very well afar. I have encountered a compensation issue where I had to come in, where an individual lost his hearing, all because he worked in a noisy environment. But you see, these issues that we're talking about is a shared responsibility. Even though when you read section 118, and with your permission, I want to read one aspect that we seem to ignore so much. I'm reading from the Labor Act 651 of 2003, section 118E. It says that supply and maintain at no cost. Let me read the subsection 1 first. It is the duty of an employer to ensure that every worker employed by him or her works under satisfactory, safe, and healthy conditions. And by extension, I'm going to E. Supply and maintain at no cost to the worker adequate safety appliances, suitable firefighting equipment, personal protective equipment, and instruct the workers in the use of the appliances or equipment. In many respects in this country, some of these things are sold to workers. They are built. So if you want the workplace to be safe, and you are obliged as an employer to provide all these equipment, together with the training and the information and how to handle this equipment, and you are going to charge the workers with it, then you expect that they will feel some kind of loss of their income. So the contributory aspect towards safety at the workplace, which must be the collaboration of the workers, you will lose that aspect. But you are ultimately in charge. When there are losses of human lives, injuries, and the rest, the compensation methodology will work against you.
Let me bring Adam in here. Adam. Have we got Adam?
I'm here.
I'm listening to Bernard, and just before the break, I was talking about, a whole long queue of people who just want the opportunity to work. Sometimes those who want to do internship, they just want the opportunity to do it for free. So here we are, you come and tell me, look, you have to provide me a helmet, provide me a high-vis jacket, provide me this place is not clean enough. Really? Next? So if you combine the lack of opportunity to work, and now you have demands and all your rights, I mean, where do we balance this equation?
Thank you very much, Nana. I think, first of all, we've got to be able to have a proper balance at the workplace, or, wherever we find ourselves in terms of safety, because safety is paramount when you are talking about humans, even animals. And so, going back to your question, at the moment, most companies in the West have relocated, their facilities to Asia, India, China, and the rest, Bangladesh, Malaysia, and the rest, because over there, it is estimated that safety is not so important in most of these countries. And so they rather dwell more on the quantity instead of the quality. Whereas in the West, you have to make sure all the dots, you tick all the dots when it comes to safety. But when you come into our setting, where even the safety inspector himself is not safe, then it becomes difficult to go into an environment. I have had safety inspectors. I wouldn't mention their names, who would come into facility, and sometimes I ask myself, I don't expect you to wear this type of attire or accoutrement when you are coming into an environment like ours. But unfortunately, they will tell you that is what they have. And so under that circumstances, you ask yourself, where do we draw the balance? How are we going to probably work out the balance and say, okay, either we recruit a lot of, people and leave out the safety, or we look at safety, vis-a-vis, the number of people we are employing. But unfortunately, it looks like we've rather gone in for quantity instead of quality. And to buttress your question or what your statement, there are too many people chasing employment, and so then it becomes difficult for the employer to ask simple questions such as, the place is not safe because by the time you won't finish and you'll be asked to leave and somebody would take your place. And so where do we draw the line? Where are we going to? I would have wished that probably the laws we have, for instance, my colleague in there spoke about, read out the law that said satisfactory, measures in terms of safety should be put in place. But you see, when it comes to, we have workplace specific. And so you go into an environment that probably a steel manufacturing company where they use a lot of heat. The temperature in there is going to be very high. You go into probably a facility that deals with, fresh fruits or meat or freezers, and you would have the blast. You are entering a blast or a freezer. These are the type of gear you would need to go in. But unfortunately, if you look at the law as it stands, it looks like there is a disconnect. It does not really define, it does not actually probably state that when they say such, so it is left at the mercy of the employer to determine and say that, you know what, at my own discretion, I will decide what will constitute safety, you know, if you have to enter into a chiller or a blast. And so they put people in there, they come out, and sometimes they have chest infections, and they come out there and they continue to spread whatever infections they have. And so, Nana, I would want to say that the law as it stands at the moment is too vague. I would have wished that the law would make it specific and say, if you are this industry, this is what we expect from you. That industry, that is what we expect from you. And also, even the safety inspectors themselves, sometimes some of them seems to, you have one person who seems to be doing all of the things. I mean, dealing with the chemicals and dealing with, I mean, going around and doing all of that. I think that it's not supposed to be the case, Nana.
Oh, what if, I'll come back to you, but what if they are trained to do, you know, chemical and not chemical stuff? But let me take some messages on Facebook. This is Adam Smith. He says, I don't share the political views of, oh no. Okay, let me say, I don't share the political views of this government, but trust me, the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, John Peter Mu, is the best performing minister. This man should be president of Ghana. Okay. Paul Yauteria says, blood donation exercise. You're all invited to donate blood exercises at the Grand Central Enterprise premises near Westfield School in Tegu Junction. Okay, John Yeboah, was there any safety officer or engineer at the site? Details of their risk assessment for that particular project, as well as toolbox stock for the particular day, should be investigated. Mala Mazuri. Okay, let's go to Baba Al-Aibi. He says, oh my God, this is very... Okay, Stillcones Ghana says, it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate accident. Without conclusions, management needs to get back to the boardroom to critically assess what went wrong and take stern actions to avoid such recurrence. From the decisions in the clip, let not be such arguments as to who should be responsible for compensation to those affected. Okay, Cozy says, never seen a minister like this before. This man knows what he's doing. May their souls rest in peace, says Nana Kwachi. And Lieutenant Samuel Bati, it's not a pit, it's the reclaim is a tunnel. Let me come to studio. Yeah. But I just want us to look at the reality. Good. We're talking about the technicalities and all the big and the fine English. But I mean, the number of people, I mean, even this Easter, the number of old ladies that came to me, that their granddaughters and grandchildren have finished poly, have finished journalism school, have finished this, have finished that, and are at home and they are looking for a work. What would they, age maybe they would do anything. In reality, you know, I mean, you can't go and tell your officer, no, I don't want to work in this studio because you have wires hanging. Well, go. There are people already working here with the same wires. They've worked here for 10 years. You know, so unless we can do laws that we can implement, and you and I know that we will never implement these laws. So I don't know, it's like a stalemate that occupies airtime. But in reality, are we ever going to wake up from this slumber to realize that, listen, health and safety, if you don't even pass it, you don't even start to work here?
Thank you, Nana. I think we have to get it right. And as a nation, we will not be able to say that because we have large number of people fighting for a constricted employment channel, we have to compromise on safety. No. If you're an employer, this is what I want you to listen to. That if you compromise on safety, the costs of your compromise is so much. Because one day you're going to lose a highly skilled staff that you have spent a lot of time in training. One day you might have to lose all your investment because you thought that it was not important to emphasize on safety. I did an inspection somewhere, again I won't mention name, and asked all the females whether if there was fire, they will be able to lift the fire extinguisher and use it. And I'm telling you, only one lady out of 15 ladies, only one lady said that she will be capable of using it. The rest told me that it is heavy and that they will even run away, even if any fire occurred from the kitchen where they were cooking. It tells you that the people had not been trained to handle the thing, and whoever put that fire extinguisher there had not been very specific as to the usage of it. Because if you're going to talk about people who will not be able to lift, 25 kilos, 30 kilos, how then do you have to go and put huge fire extinguisher somewhere? Which macho man is going to use that? So these are all small things that give us indication that at the end of the day we are compromised. You see, we might be looking at the bigger picture, but I want us to look at the early warning signs. For a good example, it is obligatory under our labor laws for every employer to provide safe drinking water at the workplace. But in some places, if you are an employee and you go and ask for drinking water, you'll be chastised as if it's not one of the safety devices. It is. To provide washrooms at the workplace for changing contaminated clothes, it is obligatory under our laws. But we simply have ignored it. So some of these little things, we have people who work at the workplace and they are able to go to their employers to go and negotiate that they are going to sell their leave. They have forgotten that the rest periods, the limitations on hours of work, they are all safety devices at the workplace. So we ourselves, we tell the employers sometimes that it is not important for us to be protected. If you understand the essence of your limits of hours of work, 40 hours maximum per week, and you go and tell your employer that, look, I want to work extra, far beyond that, and on top of it, you are saying that for the whole year, you are not taking your leave, you are selling your leave, which is not even allowed under this, under our legal regime here in Ghana.
It's mandatory that you have to take a leave.
It's mandatory because you need to recover. So all these things are little safety devices that we have put in place, that when somebody is pregnant, there are certain limitations. When somebody is young, 15, between 15, 21, we classify them as very young people who don't have to be exposed to certain hazardous works and the rest. You realize that in our homes, we expose the same kids. So it's something that we will not be able to place it just at the doorstep of government and say that, hey, government, you are not doing well, or employers. It's just more or less a collaboration
Adam,
among all the parties that we need to correct.
Hello, Adam.
And kill.
I'm here.
I'm listening to Ben, right? And it's just occurring to me, all these people pointing fingers. Somebody, Emmanuel, says, arrest the engineer. I can imagine there are a number of people working in an unhealthy environment, but don't even realize that it's unhealthy. But just because they saw the, cement collapse, well, that's an unhealthy environment. But probably they have to cross the street every day to buy sachet water to drink. I mean, exactly. there must be, there's a lot of education to be done in this direction. I mean, I didn't know that, providing water is part of, a safety in the workplace. I mean, if you've come to work, am I the one to give you water? Go and find your water or bring it to work. But we don't know all these things.
Well, yes, Nana. I think I heard him talk about the fire extinguisher, the 25 kg fire extinguisher. In other places, women and children are not supposed to lift any weight that is 25 kilos and above. But over here, these are some of the things that probably we are not even aware of. And so probably if somebody was doing his work right, the person would have realized that you don't necessarily need a 25 kilo fire extinguisher to quench a fire that probably has just ignited. And so they might need probably either a 10 kilo, 5 kilo. And so these are some of the things. And so just like you said, we all go through series of hazards, from morning till evening, and even sometimes our homes. So many hazards around us. But this incident that happened, what do you call it, in the Ahafo mines, you can hear a lot of people screaming, go on top of the roof and scream. I would say that for most of these multinational mining companies, I think somehow some of them, because of their ratings, have put in some form of measure in terms of, the safety of their workers. I wouldn't say they would have done. They would do it just like they would have done it in their home country, but one would say they have an appreciable level of safety in most of these places. So I would wish that as this story is unfolding, the Minister of Mines, Peter Honorable Amewu, is a fine minister who talks tough, and I believe that he wouldn't allow anyone, if anyone was negligent. No, I mean, that person definitely would be fished out and punished. And so I would hope that they do a very diligent, investigation so that whoever did it, condolences to the bereaved family, whoever probably was negligent gets punished. And then if I have looked at it, I'll reserve all my comments for now in order not to, prejudice or, kind of throw this whole thing into something else. But looking at it, I have had a lot of reservations with regards to what I have seen. I think it shouldn't have been the practice. But then let's hold on and see whether the investigators who have been put together will be able to tell us what actually happened. I mean, should they have gone there? Why should they have gone there? Is this preventable? I believe most of these things are preventable, so long as we put in measures, Nana.
Let me, but should we probably have a campaign where we do school safety and then go on and on about it, and then maybe we move to church safety and then maybe move to work safety, because it's overwhelming. I mean, if can we tackle it all at once, or should we break it down so that the awareness come home, and maybe even move to home safety?
Definitely. I think we need to break it down, do public education. As far as I'm concerned, that we need to start from public education. I say public education because we have an institution called the Labor Department that fits very well on statistics to help all of us. But we have deprived them of statistics. It's obligatory under Section 120 of the Labor Act that any accident at the workplace must be reported to them within 7 days. We don't do that. We don't report. And if you don't report, how would they be able to get to know the volume of accidents at the workplace so that they will be apt to their game? They will have to sit up and know that within this particular year we have had this incidence of, so let's put a lot more resources there. So we have all deprived ourselves the opportunity to do better in a way. Of course, that doesn't mean that the institution in charge should not be proactive. Coming back to your question, we need to segregate. Maybe in the education sector, we have workers there. In every sector, we have employees at the workplace. So sector by sector, we can look at it. But looking at your time, let me just give a summary as to what I think is the way forward. We need to make sure that there are specifics in our laws as to what employers must do, not to leave so much of it to their discretion. It's very dangerous. We need to make sure that we emphasize on prevention and safety culture at the workplace. It's a culture we must inculcate right from the beginning in ourselves as a people. Whether you end up being an employer or you end up being an employee, you must imbibe that culture of safety. That is the beginning. We must also make sure that sound reporting and inspection practices are key. In fact, we have labor inspectors, we have safety inspectors in this country. But I think when we look at the way we budget and give them budgetary allocations, it is as if we don't want them to function at all. So probably this is a good occasion to plead with government that let's equip them well for us to assist all of us.
I just go to say, women in mining. So, I mean, if you were looking at safety, going about specifics, would you have safety for like women in mining and men in mining and mining in general? Would there be any triangle, or it should cover everybody? Because Adam is saying that, look, if you're a woman, you don't lift over 25 kilos. So you do have a specific safety?
Yeah, you need to be very specific. You see, you are talking about every action and its possible reaction. So you need to be very specific. Look, if you go to a workplace and you have to read one tall list of what you must do to be safe in order to begin work and to make sure that every month you recap it, the better.
Let me, Adam, give me 30 seconds to just round up on this safety.
Well, I think you wanted to, where does the education start? I would say in our schools and at home. And Nana, if you have a young child at home, I'm sure if someone came to press on your doorbell and ask, where is Nana? You say Nana is in the toilet or Nana is in the bathroom. What it means is that, are we teaching our children what will constitute a safety hazard? In this part of the world, adults speak to children and children would respond. In other places, children don't speak to adults. They are told do not speak to adults. Don't even look them in the face. When you go to our schools, it is the same. So I would say that these are some of the basics we need to learn to teach our children so that they grow up, imbibing in themselves, these things, they will grow up with them. Hopefully, when they become entrepreneurs or run businesses, own businesses, work in business places, they would probably take up some of these habits that probably they would have been taught either at home or at school. Yeah, Nana.
Well, thank you very much. All too soon. That's what time will allow us. In those safety is bigger than 1 hour, but at least we tried to tackle it. Let's segregate it. But safety culture is, I think, that's something that really pricked me. You have to create a safety culture so that even if you're dead and gone, it becomes a culture, and then people sort of practice it. But if we're always going to wait for something to collapse before we do a show about it, then it's always going to be here with us. But I always give you this number before I go, and it's 024-366-2001. 024-366-2001. Tanti's Fashions, just by Nyao Clinic. They produce my shirts, give me my shirts for the show. Give them a call and get yourself a shirt. I want to say thank you so much to Adam and Ben for the education. Even clean, safe water in the workplace is part of your safety. And don't pay for your high-vis jacket, even though there's no jobs. Demand that it's part of health and safety. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the education. Tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you.
Thank you.